All right, welcome back everyone to the latest episode of Deep Dive. Sorry, we're joining a little bit late on our side and maybe too early on the other side. Today we have a special guest. We have a lot to discuss. We're joined by a good friend of mine, newfound friend of mine, professor of practice at George Washington University, right? GW in Washington D.C. and also, of course, you're bi-coastal. Last time I checked, very madman, very madman. Hussein, welcome to our little show here.
Thank you so much for having me, Richard.
Pleasure. Obviously, before we go into the nitty-gritties of your model and its track record, just for the purpose of folks, for them to get to know a little bit about you and how you stumbled upon this interface of AI and analytics and political analysis. Just a bit of background about yourself would be appreciated.
Okay, yeah, thank you for having me over. And I think part of what I'm doing right now is trying to bring AI into the policy and the politics elections domain, which are very traditional industries. And I've spent over a decade and a half in the policy sector here in the US, Pakistan, and Australia. And one thing I was constantly noticing was that the traditional way of understanding what's happening in the world through media or even through other channels was almost becoming impossible because the explosion of data and digitalization in the last 10, 15 years has made humans and organizations and governments literally impossible to collect that data, process that data, and make decisions of that data. So I ended up jumping into this domain of using AI to from the start to end to collect the data, process the data, and help the governments make decisions and understand how the world is operating. And never thought I realized, but this started becoming more and more applicable in the elections and the democracy place, where the manipulative narratives, manipulation of data was very much there, and people were just confused on what to believe and what not to believe, especially because of social media and everything becoming everything now. So this is how I jumped into this.
Dr. Nadim, before we go to your model and also about well, what are the recent elections you analyzed? Well, obviously we had some conversation about your background, and you're not the first friend from Pakistan I've met who's now based in the United States, and a lot of you tend to be people who used to be with our good friend, Mr. Khan. Could you tell me a little bit about your own experience of? I mean, my understanding of your former principal, last time I checked, is that he was populist in a sense, but he was also pushing the envelope and an anti-system guy in a country that, in many ways, was increasingly considered a failed state. And I don't mean it in a judgmental way. Of course, I'm very
For
familiar
sure.
with all of the sacrifices that Pakistan made throughout the
Yeah.
year. Its conflict with India, building its own nuclear weapons,
Yeah.
and all the complexities of Cold War and the Afghan War. We can have a whole hour of discussion about at least
Yeah.
the background. But can you tell me a little bit about how you got into the harakat, the movement? Sorry, that Mr. Khan started.
So I'm going to put my academic hat on. So the places we belong are usually called the post-colonial states, but in the fact, they're not really post-colonial states. The colonization is very much present. The only difference is that the British colonization has been replaced by the local ruling elite, which is continuing with those same practices of colonization. So, for instance, the Pakistan army, the political dynasties, they're doing exactly what the Britishers did, and they never really decolonized. So, Imran Khan, I mean, when people use the word populism, especially the Americans, it has a certain connotations that developed in the Western societies. Really, in Pakistan, what he's talking about is that, the common sense issues. There should be no corruption, that these two political dynasties should not take turns ruling the country, and that we need a third voice. And that third voice is, for instance, he said, I'm that third voice that can, bring justice into the society. So the Americans tend to see that as populism, but really in locally in Pakistan, in these post-colonial world, these are those suppressed voices that throughout the Cold War were not allowed to come out because somehow the narrative was that these are communist voices who want to go into the Russian orbit. I mean, you know the history better than me. So I think Imran Khan right now where he is, he's in that death cell for the last 1.5 year, and part of the reason why he's there is because he didn't want to be part of the Ukraine war. He didn't want Pakistan army to get Pakistan embroiled into a new Afghanistan war. So he's paying the price for that. as for the movement, I think the movement
Yeah,
is
just to be clear, I'm
it's
talking about
kind of
Tahrik Insaf. So this is the movement for justice,
yeah
right? So
yeah. So the
so
movement
how is
of
it
justice
different
is
from
really a
how is it different from the traditional one, from
yeah
the Sharif family's dynasty, from the Bhutto's family, and obviously from the deep
yeah
state? Last time I checked. So how is the Tahrik Insaf
yeah.
different in that sense? Yeah.
So I think the big difference is that the Sharif family dynasty and the Bhutto dynasty, these two, they they're in hand with the military establishment. So these political dynasties are not really trying to change the system or improve the feudalism in Pakistan. They really want the society to be stuck in the 1970s and the 80s, which is why Pakistan hasn't really grown economically. The difference with the Prime Minister Imran Khan was that he focused a lot on liberating the people from these clutches, which he thought that the poverty is a big trap, and the political dynasties ensure that the poverty trap is ingrained because that gets them hold on power. So he was very much against that. He was also very much against the idea of the military establishment running the country, because then that is again a trapping which the military is getting used to, wage wars on their own people. So I think he selected two or three different traps: the military trap, the poverty trap, and then he started attacking that we need to liberate the people. So in a sense it becomes kind of like Pakistan's 1776 movement, the war of independence. Only the fact that when we got independence in 47, it was really an independence from the British, but we ended up with the local ruling elite. So now the movement right now is to liberate the people from that very colonized local elite that we have.
It's a second independence movement towards a much more egalitarian, genuine democracy. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously, Imran Khan, for some people who may not be familiar, of course, his background as a cricket world champion, a celebrity in his own right, Naomi Campbell, I think, among others, for people he dated. If I'm not mistaken, he was also in Oxford Union, or was it Bhutto? Anyway,
No,
you
no,
have
he
quite a colorful
Imran.
elite, which reminds us of the Philippine elite, who also punch well above the weight. They were the elites in the Ivy League school in our case, and in your case, in the Oxbridges and all of that. So why would
Yeah,
someone with such a celebrity background, such a superstar, maybe our version of Manny Pacquiao folded into some Ivy League, where like Imran Khan is a fascinating guy, right? Is very charismatic, a good-looking guy. Dated the top celebrities back in the day, quite a playboy image. Next thing you know, I mean, he's kind of almost I don't want to use the word Gandhi because I might get into trouble because but he became almost kind of like a spiritual leader, right? Considering the threat he was facing, the assassination threat. So actually I defended Imran Khan online when there was back
yeah,
and forth with some of the other sides, because I just felt, hey, of course you cannot blame Imran Khan for the pandemic period dip. It would be
yeah,
completely unfair to compare to. And I realized, oh my God, he has such a huge following and also huge detractors online. So kind of reminded me of the Duterte days and Modi in the
yeah.
case of India. But of course, Imran Khan quite was different, right? I would call him an anti-system person, right?
He was very anti-system. People tend to compare him with, let's say, Trump or Duterte, or he actually was saying the exact opposite. He was saying that these killings and these kicking out Afghan refugees, this is not a good idea. So he ended up like giving nationality to a million over Afghan refugees. So he's not a populist guy who's like typically populist in the Western sense, anti-immigration, anti racial laws, etc., etc. So he basically said, we need justice. We have hosted these Afghan refugees. We should keep them here, and we should have a more egalitarian government. And this power system of the military, this needs to be diluted. So in a way, he was populist for a very different cause compared to Trump and I would say
So would
the
you
as
say
well.
it's like a Bernie type? We would like left populist? If that, I mean, if we were, the reason I'm saying it's populist because, of course, he adopted unorthodox approach. He has a very unorthodox background. He doesn't come from traditional politician background.
Yeah,
I think we can all agree that he had quite a big sense of himself, to put it mildly. I think no one can deny it. I've asked people who have been close to him throughout the years, and you cannot blame him. You're a cricket champion, Oxford graduate, and all of that. So that's why I think it's easy to lump him in with this kind of a more generic sense of populist. But could you say he's kind of a left populist in that sense, in a Pakistani context, a guy pushing for a more egalitarian, genuine form of democracy?
I agree with you on that. I mean, he's not as radically left as the Bernie Sanders, but for instance, one of the big things that he wanted to do was he was very big on climate. The first politician ever who's talked about climate in Pakistan, and he was very big on like free healthcare. Again, that's something that doesn't exist in Pakistan. So certain things that the Bernie Sanders stand for. Imran Khan actually did the same thing in Pakistan. Pakistan. And I think he went through a particular level of evolution from, being a Playboy star, the cricketing star, and somebody who has seen the peak of the British society and the Western society, and coming back to Pakistan and realizing that, my people are just, being used as fodder by these elite. So he was like, I mean, who better than me to fight the fight? And the guy's a fighter, basically. And when I last met him before I left Pakistan, he was just getting ready, and he was like, I've been a prime minister, and my hands were like shackled over there because I couldn't do anything. But now they've thrown me out. I'm going to show them how to fight, and he's been fighting like anything. So he's a fighter, I would say, more than anything else.
And just last one, because obviously it's not about Pakistan politics, and I don't want to put you in trouble. Maybe you want to get back home, but I mean, people who are attracted to me, people were like, Moid Yusuf, like you, like very highly educated, very smart people. Uh, so in a sense, sometimes he reminds me also of like kind of Macron, kind of like this kind of a charismatic, modernizing guy, bringing over the geeks, right? I mean, you and Moid are quite geeky guys in a good way, sense of the word. Um, was that something unprecedented in the case of Pakistan? That he became Imran Khan became kind of a magnet for a non-traditional technocratic new elite to come into politics, because politics is obviously very dirty in Pakistan. I would say even more risky than most democracies, right? So can you
Absolutely.
tell me a little bit about this? Yeah.
I usually say this is that it's safer to be a terrorist in Pakistan than being a politician. But politicians get picked up almost on the daily basis, so it's not easy. The good thing with Imran Khan was that because he was an outsider to the politics, he opened the floodgates of outsiders to come in. So he kind of became a kind of like a precedent that you can get into the politics. But now what is happening to him? I think those floodgates are now again shut down because the traditional political elite and the military establishment has basically shown that if you're educated, you're not even supposed to be in Pakistan. So they're encouraging educated people or any of the people with the means and the resources to actually just move out. And part of the reason is because any educated person or the person with means and resources is a direct threat to their power, unless you go and pledge your allegiance to them, which doesn't really happen all the time. So someone like me is right now here in the US. Part of the reason is because I don't have any space over there unless I obey and do my allegiance. If not, if I'm critical, then I have to be in the US and be critical and do whatever the hell we want to do. And one of the stuff I'm doing is using AI to enhance and improve democracy in Pakistan. So that's one of the things that I did building the tech company.
Yeah, without putting you in too much. I mean, just for people. I mean, I'm sure people are, familiar with Malala Yousafzai and the kind of risk that people have to go through just to push for some basic rights, like basic right of education or people, and
Yeah,
the kind of courageous people you have. I mean, Malala is quite a huge inspiration for a whole generation. I was in Brussels when she was just about to give a speech during the European Parliament back in the day.
yeah,
Her pictures were all over the
yeah,
place. So your country doesn't lack this young, courageous people, except like, the system so far is not set up in a certain way. Nevertheless, innovation is the name of the game, and you have to constantly push the envelope. So, Hussein, how did you come about? Did you have background also in engineering, or it's that you just tried to marry your social science training and also latest development in technology? Because as we speak, some of the leading folks in the AI world are a lot of them have no background in engineering, right? Including
yeah.
the
That's
man who's now leading, yeah, is it the Microsoft or right? So, can we talk a lot? Sulaiman, right? Mustafa Sulaiman, right? For instance, these
yeah,
probably of non-engineering background. So, just for the sake of it, how did you come about this AI thing? The reason I asked this, Hossein, is because
yeah,
when you say AI, immediately people who come to your mind are this kind of a meme coin, Dogecoin, scammy Andrew Tate type online. Oh, we do AI. Like you have a lot of dodgy people out there. So unfortunately, I think a lot of scammy types gave a bad reputation
yeah.
to legit analytics. So just for the sake of the audience, for them to be familiar how you arrive at this. So I was just establishing to everyone that you're actually a legit guy. You ran a think tank
Yeah,
in Pakistan. You were part of
yeah,
the progressive movement.
yeah.
So now let's talk about your model and how you developed it.
So here's the thing. My background is very heavily in the quantitative side of social science. So I
Right.
do data for social science, which basically includes playing with a lot of data sets, quant work, and then being able to look at larger patterns, meta patterns, and then making predictions. Now, to do all of that data, AI has a new, framework on how do you process all of that data. So whereas where we were doing manual data, let's say 300 data sets over a period of 1 month, we can do like billions of data sets with the power of computation now in seconds through AI. Now, I'm the quant side and the application side of AI. My co-founder and my brother, Hassan, he's the engineering guy. So he was at IBM Watson for 15 years. He was the AI engineer, and he's the one who took the technical side. I took the application side of it. Now, the interesting part is the combination. The engineer really doesn't know what to build unless and until someone from the social science side, tell that, look, this is what the user wants. This is how the democracy is going to evolve. Can we solve the democracy in real time? So you have to then sit with the engineering team, and then that comes becomes part of the product. So one of the interesting things that is happening around the world now, specifically with AI, is that we need less of engineers because AI is doing a lot of great work for software engineers, and it's making them redundant in many ways. So it's easier to build the products now. The
It's the
harder part
interpretation.
is,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the harder thing is, and what we need more are people who do philosophy or who practice philosophy, which is basically people trained how to think, which is the part of the social science and the philosophy part. So you can build any product right now, but the fact that what product is needed is going to be an outcome of how the society is going to be evolving in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Now, that is not the job of the engineer. That is a job of someone who is working in the social science. So it's the social scientists and the philosophers that are the new product developers and the people who are conceiving the product, which is why you had like Steve Jobs as the greatest example. It was a Wozniak that was building the hard product, but it was Jobs who predicted that, this is where the market is going to
The
be.
consumer
Personal computers for
patterns.
everyone. So I
Yeah.
think this is where me and my brother have come in. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's 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 everything now, figuring out what the consumer is going to want in the next 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was a lot of overestimation of how um engineering would define our era when in fact what you need is really the interpretation of data and then
Yeah,
contextualize
yeah,
in human context because human beings are not construction materials, right? They're reflexive units and it's over always there's a factor of over
yeah,
determination. Now, so how did you start with your model's development? So obviously AI
yeah,
is a learning process. It develops as more
yeah,
data comes in, as it practices
yeah,
more large language models. Did you start with predicting the Pakistani elections, parliamentary? Did you start with, because parliamentary elections have their own
yeah,
complexities, presidential
yeah.
elections have their own, especially American presidential elections. So which elections you first started analyzing with your model?
So we went into five elections. This is going to be the Philippines is going to be our fifth election. We started with the Polish election actually. We
Oh,
went with the Polish election, Pakistan, India,
another very polarized,
Bangladesh.
another very polarized context. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we were able to predict with very good accuracy in the Polish elections, and then we went to the Pakistan elections. Again, we did very well over there. India, the US, and now with the Philippines. Philippines is a very interesting use case because you have like 60, 65 senators, of which 20, 25 are like, in the run. And to be able to predict the spots is a lot harder because you're doing a lot of data. Otherwise, in the US, it was like, very simple. Trump, Kamala Harris, you take the data of the two, you pick up the public pulse, align it with their policies, and see who's where in like on immigration issue, on the abortion issue, etc. And then you are able to compute that to generate a score that this is person is going to be predictable over here. But in terms of how I reached over here, I was very interested in solving one problem. When I left the government, I saw one thing, that the existing traditional state, society, and practice of things had completely collapsed. For instance, I'll give you an example. The traditional surveys. Now, these surveys, let's talk about Philippines, for instance, Pulse Asia, SWS.
Wait. Can
These
we
are
talk first
very,
about? I'm sorry for cutting it. Maybe
yeah,
let's talk about India because I literally saw people crying, the pollsters crying after elections on national TV. I mean, that was quite the sight. I mean, literally they were crying because they
yeah,
got it so wrong. Rahul Gandhi
they
way
got it so wrong.
underperformed and Modi Beijing
Yeah,
way
yeah,
underperformed.
yeah.
Maybe let's before attack. Let's go into my colleagues because I got the. Let's talk first. Some of the other elections where the polls went really
Sure.
wrong. India, for instance, right?
So India, or even recent is the US, for
The
instance.
US one, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Every single poll was wrong. Now, why are they wrong? I mean, there are two things to it. One, the methodology that they're using is the traditional methodology of the panel surveys. And you're an academic, you know how the panels work. You build a panel, and over time, that panels continue to become more and more redundant because somebody is falling off, the people are getting used to the panel. So it kind of creates a sort of a sentiment where the panel keeps incentivizing the same
Self-reinforcing.
candidate that is being, it's become
Self-reinforcing.
reinforcing. So you start seeing that, the panel that was developed in 1992 or 2006, it continues that way. And the reason is because of the costing issue, because it's very hard to put a panel. You spend a millions of dollars on that. Now you're stuck with that panel because unless and until you don't get the full value out of it, you keep running it. And when you keep running it, the eventual result is that, you're predicting that Hillary Clinton is going to win with 93% of the margin, and then Donald Trump wins in 2016. So I saw that problem and I was like, okay, we're living in a time where letters have been replaced with emails, where, media has been replaced with social media. Why are the survey making and gathering public pulse still done the same traditional way? What I then did was that I started doing real-time surveys. So our system is deployed, let's say in the US, was deployed in the US, and we were picking up every single conversation that was coming from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Truth Social, newspapers, and everything. The goal was very simple. Can I gather the public common sense and then align it with what the candidates are saying? So if I gather a public pulse that says that 70% of the people in the Buck County, Pennsylvania, are anti-immigration, and I notice that the Donald Trump is very hard on immigration, and Kamala Harris is basically, completely different. So you can tell very clearly
That's
on these
inferential,
metrics,
right? So you
influential.
align the sentiment with what, essentially
Absolutely.
you look at the demand side and then you look at the supply side and whether they meet essentially
Pre-
like a supply
Precisely.
and okay, I get what you're
And
saying.
you're doing this at massive level on real time, like completely, tuck, 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 you have issue A, issue B, issue C, issue D. We're collecting all the data and we're looking at which candidate. And this is exactly what we're doing with the Philippines as well. We're looking at what the people want. We're picking up, and from different regions, cities, populations, demographics, picking up that. And we're seeing which of these 20 candidates are most aligned to these different things. Now, Philippines, I mean, I will talk maybe later. It's a different society because, there's patronage politics. There is, traditional politics, and,
Command votes,
there
yeah,
is,
command votes whereby it's not necessarily your
yeah,
preference, it's essentially how you're corralled, right? So that's why we say
yeah,
the machine, for instance, give you 5 to 10% differentials if you're especially with the
yeah,
administration. So that's something we're looking at. So that obviously has a distortionary effect. But
yeah,
nevertheless, you are confident that your model, I mean, you look at India, which it's not like India doesn't have patronage politics or Pakistan, right?
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I think Jai Shankar used to call it vote banks, vote banks. Yeah, I think that's the Indian term they use, vote banks.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so let's get the ball rolling in the case of the Philippines. The reason I'm asking you a lot of this, Hossein, is because personally I was quite critical of folks using the Google Trends, for instance, to try to
yeah,
figure out the direction of the wind. Because Google Trends was just about how many you're just researching about Trump.
mhm,
I mean, you like the guy, so you cannot say
yeah,
that that's preference.
yeah,
Interest is not
yeah,
preference. Interest is just
yeah,
so. I think a lot of people kind of overread into Google Trends or sometimes
yeah,
in
yeah,
a distortionary way. So what I'm looking at is how is your model, for instance, different from, I remember in 2015, there was a South African social media company that predicted the loss of Hillary Clinton, right? Based on the emojis and the sentiments that were expressed on Facebook,
yeah.
right? So we already saw kind of an inklings of much more advanced and sophisticated versions that you're looking at. Is that like, is yours like a lighter ahead version of that? what we were saying 10, 15 years ago in terms of online sentiment expression and then alignment with the candidate and all of that.
Yeah, I think in many ways it's that it's except that we're using way robust data. So we're not just picking up emojis. We're looking at every conversation.
Every
Now,
digital
5 years
footprint,
back,
every digital footprint, basically.
we're picking up 2.8 million data sets every single day from the Philippines right now. The reason why I'm saying that is look, let's simplify this. What are we really doing? Uh, from the physical space, if you have like you're sitting in a room which has about 1,000 people, manually, let's say you want to do it manually in 3 hours, you would be able to maximum get like pulse from 50 people. So you'll probably end up doing what? Sampling. You will pick up a few women, you'll pick a few people. That's great. It works. But we're in a time where we have sensors that allows us to pick up data from all 1,000 people. Forget 1,000, we can pick up data from 1 million people. Now we're taking in that 1 million people data. The level of accuracy goes way high. So, and the bias level comes very much down if you want to talk about the sampling part where all the bias goes in. So a lot of people that were doing like the surveys in the US, their bias was so inherent because they were picking up sampling data from the East Coast states. Nobody was going and talking to the people in the Bible Belt. So naturally, Kamala Harris was winning by 4 points because you have a particular bias. Now, what we're doing is that the AI is built in a way where it doesn't have a bias. It's picking up conversations from, let's say, the Bible Belt, from ABC, and it's able to compute that and figure out, okay, what is the national pulse? Then what is the regional pulse? What is the pulse within the youth? What is the pulse within 18 to 25 women, etc., etc.? And can then this be an indicator of Trump winning or Kamala Harris winning? So that level of granularity is what gives us accuracy. We were the only model, and I showed you, and I sent you the details of that as well. We were able to predict to the point accuracy with the Pennsylvania and also with the Michigan as well. And part of the reason was not because we did some rocket science. We were able to do one thing right, which is diversified data sources, which is everything. AI can be built by anyone, but what kind of data sources AI is basically collecting, that is part of your training where you have to say that, you have to pick up 15 blogs, posts, and social media from these, mega accounts, not just like, the accounts that are like from California or Berkeley. So that's what is different. Now we're trying to do the exact thing with Philippines, which is much harder because part of the Philippine population, like the economic group D and E, are are not on social media that actively, right?
Or
So
they
how do
may
you
not
pick
have
up the
internet access even. I mean, there's also the access. So
even
you get their digital
yeah.
footprint, for
So
instance.
let's say if I want to like, pick up the pulse of fishermen in Philippines, how do I do that? It's a very large group, right? So where are they going to work? How do I know that? That is the blank area. So those outliers, we've tried to develop a model to go around that. So if the previous surveys have recorded the D and E in a particular way, now we're able to correlate that with the current surveys as well, and then looking at the public pulse. So really what we're trying to figure out is one thing, which is can we gather the common sense of the public? So let's say the common sense says that, VP Sara Duterte should be impeached. Can we collect that? Absolutely, we can. And we can go into very much granularity in figuring out whether that is the common sense or not. But if the common sense says that, she needs to be booted out only through an election, then there is a different ball game altogether. So we can answer these very big questions very clearly
And
through our
also the
platform.
shift in the sentiments. Because sentiments also
Absolutely.
shift. They're not static.
Mhm. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
So can we have an example, for instance, some of your data gathering on? Because some of the things I found interesting, obviously we have been interviewing the more traditional survey folks. We have also friends who are doing, for instance, digital surveys, etc. So one of the things we're looking at, for instance, Bongo is doing very well in practically all of the surveys and consolidating his position, with one exception, but at least in your survey, in the Pulsation survey, SWS and some of the other ones I know, he could be even going for the gold, right? Especially with the two Tulfo brothers potentially chipping away at each other among other
Yeah.
imponderables. But interestingly, Bam Aquino and Kiko are doing very well in your model. Isn't that because more middle class folks who tend to be more, I don't know, pink, quote unquote, tend to have more digital footprint? Doesn't that introduce some biases into the system? that maybe there's an
So
over-representation of digital footprint for some of these folks.
So our model is Urban Tulfo has, for instance, doesn't have a very large footprint compared to many others in the social media part. Yet in our surveys, he's constantly ranked in the top three. And we've been running this model for the last 1 year now. And Bam and Kiko were never in the top 12, by the way. They were always in like 16 and the 17s till until last year. It's only until last few months that we've noticed that they started bumping in, and part of the reason I think is it's very interesting because what we do, because this is our fifth election, we're seeing so many patterns emerging from what we saw in Poland, what we saw in Pakistan, what we saw in the US. And the same patterns are really emerging in Philippines as well. So, for instance, the current Marcos versus Duterte thing that's going on, it's pretty much, what happened between the Democrats and the Republicans over here as well. And pretty much what happened in Pakistan, where the
The
military establishment
bifurcation,
went
the bifurcation. Yeah.
the bifurcation, yeah. So this one-on-one game essentially it has been playing out everywhere around the world. Now, when you pursue the lawfare method, which happened in Pakistan, Imran Khan won by a landslide, like a two-third majority. In the US, Trump did the exact same thing. So somebody was asking me about my analysis on the current Duterte and Marcos thing. My opinion on that was very simple, that if you look at the data and the patterns, and if you compare that with the Greek political methodologies, you know one thing, that the greatest thing in politics is tragedy. If
Mm.
you're able to give a tragedy to a political candidate, let's say Sara Duterte is impeached, she becomes a victim, there is a tragedy. Nobody really cares whether it was corruption,
Yeah.
$1 billion corruption, $2 billion corruption. The base becomes charged because now she has tragedy. And if they played their cards right, you're going to see a return which is going to be twice or three times bigger, which is one of the things that we've talked about in the US politics as well, that the lawfare, a political leader needs to be booted out through the democratic means and through the public voice. So while impeaching is a complete democratic mean, but it's not one of the best political means. So these are two very different things. So we're noticing very similar trends emerging over here because of the bifurcation. And as far as the Kiko and the BAM is concerned, because the space is opening up, there is a depolarization in the charge. All of a sudden, there is an opportunity for a third force to emerge. And that third force, I don't think they've truly reached there yet, but they're
Right.
on the trajectory to do that, to become a third party. Now, that is something that we're also noticing around the world in different elections, where people are sick and tired of the two giants and the two elephants fighting, and they need a third option. And if the third option is palatable, and I think Kiko and Ban have played the right cards in terms of, focusing on the education and the agriculture. They do have some baggage, with the political dynasties and some of that. Yet, I think the larger game is so big that people are not really too bothered about that as well. So we saw a very big jump in the service. And by the way, our system was showing the jump for Bam Aquino and Aquino 2 months before these Pulse Asia showed
Reflected.
that jump.
Mm.
Yeah, I'll explain to you in 30 seconds why that is the case. Because our sentiment model is real time, we're able to pick up sensitivity in the sentiment and the change in the pulse very quickly. Compared to Pulse Asia, that is going to have to change its panel, or any other survey, traditional survey or digital survey, that is going to change the panel and do the survey in a month's time. We're seeing in real time, for instance, right now, the admin slate is slipping in the rankings. Part of the reason is because the admin slate is not coherent enough. It's not a coherent team. And the reason why the PDPs, the two candidates that they have, they're rising is because, again, the whole factor of the impeachment and the polarization is pushing up Bongo and Bato in a ranking. And there's a complete, now how things are going to emerge in the next 3 months. It's all in the air. But I do think that the trend might actually continue in the same way. There will be some candidates from the admin slate that are going to be right up there. But for instance, Abigail, a few others, they might not be able to sustain their positions in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, we see some of the big names which are struggling. I mean, it used to be even Amy Marcos, the sister of the president, although she's slightly doing a bit better in some of the surveys
Yeah.
and numbers we saw. Can we look at your numbers? Can you project your numbers so that for folks who later on see
Yeah.
the video version of this, they'll have an appreciation. So what is our latest ranking and all? And what is the direction of the wind we're looking at? And if you can give
So
a sense of the interface of without, giving
yeah.
away
So this is our main interface. I mean, one of the things we wanted to do was that for anyone in the Philippines to be able to, come and check out their candidate, what anyone is saying about them. So let's say if you're interested in Camilla, you can basically see what the current public
Mhm.
sentiment is. And
Right,
you'll notice we've been tracking that for the past couple of months, 40% of the entire conversation about her is literally criticism. About political dynasty, her campaign spending. So, when you look at the sentiment analysis,
right.
45% of the entire conversation is negative. Now, while she's being ranked by traditional surveys as, in top 12, we don't believe that she's going to make it to the top 12. It's going to be very, very hard for her.
Yeah,
Same
very
thing, I
hard.
mean, for instance, we were talking about Bamaquino. You constantly notice that his public appeal and his whole conversation is very much related to, the box on education and
Education,
employment.
employment, yeah.
Uh, yeah, and the criticism is
Also, he has
very much
60%
that he's
positive. That's
so
interesting.
he has 60% positive and negative is 15%. And the 15% negative is really about,
Mm.
his slight political neutrality on the impeachment issue, because I think he doesn't want to get into that. So there is that, so our model is like really pushing that fact
Yeah.
that he may be able to break into top 12.
You got
Now, the
some
second
top
is,
opinion makers. What does that mean? Are these thought leaders for shaping perception about these people?
yeah, so these are the people
I
that are
mean,
actually,
without
you
giving
can
away.
break, yeah. So you
Yeah.
can break down into the narrative, what are the keywords that are being
Mm.
used, what languages the conversation is coming.
There's
And
even
top opinion
Spanish.
makers are all,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
these are
these are
over
all
in
the
the
people that are,
Philippines. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So these are the people that are talking about him. So you can basically
Right,
see
right.
what kind of network and who are the people that are most engaged with their with his content and all of that. You can see it for anyone. And you can also then see the whole digital traffic on him. So you don't really have to, go from Twitter or TikTok. You can see all the posts from different platforms generating over here.
Right. So it's all of the major
And
platforms there. All of the major
all
platforms.
major platforms. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And the same thing you can do with we really enjoyed looking at the president and the VP because this is something very exciting. Now, initially in the last couple of weeks, the VP Sara was getting a lot of flack, but I think they had a rally yesterday
Yeah.
in Cebu, I think, and
Not
all
many
of a
people
sudden
showed
her
up. Yeah. But good enough. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, so her public approval rate was initially 45 to 30, but it jumped slightly because all of a sudden their sentiment is a little bit more on their side right now. But this keeps fluctuating. But at the moment she's an underdog and she's on the receiving end of it. And the president is doing much better at the moment. And this is where the model is where we're trying to predict the basically top 10. And Tulfo is naturally one standard candidate that is,
Yeah.
in the top
Consistently
three.
number one. Yeah.
Bongo, Pia, they're all standard ones. Manny keeps moving up and down. Imi has recently started to make
Third.
a
Yeah.
little bit bigger. Tito is usually on top, but Tito is also traditional, so he's, I think, losing touch. I think this may be one of the last few elections he may be able to do because he's losing a lot of ground from what we've noticed.
Mm.
Our system is, again, Abby fluctuates a lot over here as well. Not a very, standard candidate who's on the top. And Kiko is becoming very permanent now at around between 9, 10, 11, 12. BAM is also now, I mean, initially BAM was in 16 and 17, but now BAM is also on a safer side of 11 and 14 constantly.
Yeah,
But
the
he's
50%
still,
chance of winning.
yeah, yeah. So
Ben is
you
not doing
notice that,
so well. That's interesting. Ben Tulfo does very well in a couple of other services, even
now
number two. Right.
this is one of the main problems we're having where we
Mm.
don't know. Ben Tulfo is somehow our system is not able to incentivize him, and let's figure out why. Because it's picking
Is
up
there a blind
traffic, and
spot? Is there a blind spot problem? I mean, I'm sure you want to say
I
the model is perfect, but that's maybe maybe I'm ruining
so
it. career by making fun of his Elvis Presley English. Like, it's like
No, you see, I'm an experimental guy, and I'm an academic, so I can always, claim the academic, flaws in this. But
yeah,
with Ben, somehow our AI model is not able to give him the same as Erwin Tulfo, and it
right.
is able to, pick up. And I guess it's partly because of the conversation, the Tulfos involved family in
Mixed up.
political dynasties, the
Mm,
controversies. So, negative, it keeps giving a 45% negative to him. Critics focus on controversial statements, accusations of being part of a dynasty, and perceived arrogance. Now, this is where I think this is going to be a real test for us because even in the US elections, we were constantly saying Trump is going to win. And all of my friends and the experts were telling me, Hussein, you're going to ruin your career if you're going to go with that. And eventually, I mean, the Trump ended up winning. With Tulfo as well, I think this is going to be that moment where either we're going to be like, winning big or our model is going to completely fail with Tulfo. But I think he's one of those candidates where our model is not, predicting this him to make it big into the top 12. So yeah, that's that. And then when
is there a
we have
website people can access these things, or this is just this is the backyard kitchen? Is this from
no,
inside?
no, this is open to public. This is
This
completely
open.
open to
Okay,
public. You
yeah.
can
So
access.
I'll just
Yeah,
forward to folks so that they can see it. This is
yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
So this is open to public. And one last thing we did for the public is because this is a new form of media and survey making. So we gave the daily news by anything you want to know about the Filipino politics and Senate elections. You don't have to go to 50 different sources or scan the social media. You can just get it from here. So, Duterte criticized the admin in Cebu. Senate President Chiz responded to calls for impeachment. What's happening on the economy front, the US front, the foreign policy front, you can basically get all sorts of news over here, and you can, subscribe it over here, and it will keep sending you daily 11 o'clock in the morning. You will get all what you need to do from here. So we've kind of like made it in a way because we realized that, the humans don't have the capability to move from TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, social media. It's frying everyone's brain. You can't process it. So what we've done is that the AI is processing all the information on candidates, the rankings, the daily news. You just come to our platform. It's open. It's free. You log in. You don't even have to log in. You just put it in there and see what's happening on the election front. So if you're making up a mind to work, either do the 30 team, the admin slate, or Bam Aquino or Kiko, just come and see who's talking what and how they're responding, and you can do that. So
So
that's what
just
we've
for
done.
the purpose of fairness and academic rigor, what are the I mean, like AI is not perfect, right? We have found a lot of problems with the chat GPTs of this world, the DeepSeek. We have a whole different set of problems with that. What were the things you noticed in the past, the potential blind spots, and how you corrected them, and what are the things that you're excited to see whether this blind spot will work, I mean, will work against your model, or is has it been covered enough? Because they're always going to be that
Yeah.
aspect, right? It's a
Well,
dialectical process, if I can put it
yeah.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's never going to be perfect. One thing is that it's never going to be perfect. It may be able to predict elections perfectly, but the model is going to continue to grow. Now, the way I see it, we're seeing very, very early stages of AI. Think of it as a 2-year-old child right now, and you ask a 2-year-old to make predictions. So you should use it what it is good at. It can give you real-time public pulse. Like, I mean, it show you about Villar, I showed you about Aquino, about Marcos. You can see the large trends. Are they 100% accurate to the ground? Maybe not. Probably not. Definitely not, I'm saying. Now, the thing where the problem is, and where the opportunity is also there, with the large language models like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, they're not playing into verticals, and they're not subject level experts on Philippines historical background, on Philippines public sentiment, because the AI is not really picking up public sentiment from right now. What we're trying to do with this model is that we picked up the model and we customized it very deeply and trained it on the Filipino history, culture, politics, society, dynasties, and everything. And now we're training it on the real-time data for it to become a PhD level subject expert on the Philippines. So our model becomes a lot more accurate than GPT. For instance, if you put in the same stuff in the GPT, it will not be able to show you the same level of accuracy. It will be 70, 80% accurate. We are about 90% accurate. So we continue to refresh the model. But the goal is very simple. What we have right now is the public facing of what you see. I mean, we publish the results. But at the back end, the machine we have is really this very, very heavy infrastructure, like DeepSeek. We've built our own model, which is very customized to the Philippine politics. So you can basically ask it questions like, I want to know exactly right now what is the public pulse of Bongbong Marcos in Manila Metro. And it will be able to go through the entire space, give you exactly what people are saying, give me three problems that people are facing in the Bicol region. And will be tell you, okay, number one, there is a problem of waste management, two, crime, three. So it is such a beautiful way because now if you're in a policy, you don't have to spend millions of dollars on surveys or anything to go and check what the people feel. One click of a button, the population and the citizen is connected to the policy maker. Now that to me is the most beautiful thing which I want to do
It's like a
is
live
how do you
NASDAQ.
make
It's like a
yeah,
live NASDAQ, just or check
yeah,
Bitcoin. What is the latest up
yeah,
and down in Bitcoin, right? I mean, and it's
yeah,
free. I mean, you can do it almost
yeah,
online for free. So it gives you something close to that because, yeah, I mean, you're right in a sense that if you look at traditional servers, they're very expensive, um, and they give you snapshots after huge gaps, right? It's like, this one like so you can see all of the throws and ups and downs and all of that. So if you're a campaign team, you can look at it and constantly you can adjust, right? Calibrate. It's like an MMA, and at every moment you're analyzing, is the punch going in the
yeah,
right way? Is he mixing
yeah,
up?
yeah,
I see what you're saying, right? It's a live
yeah.
analytics in that sense. Yeah.
So our goal is very simple with this. We want to be the ones to do, it's a new democracy. It's a new way of gathering public pulse, which to us is how the future of democracy is going to look like with very deep infrastructure of AI. So the public is directly connected to the policy community. So if your road needs to be fixed, nobody has to come and do the survey and do the whole thing. The AI is basically able to generate that data and put it out there in the government, and the government is able to execute and implement that in real time. So that is what we're trying to do in terms of like, making democracy real time, making public pulse real time, so that the gap between the ruling class and the ruled is diminished. And that's something I think AI can do very, very effectively.
And Jose, what about the concerns with hallucination? We saw that a lot with at least earlier generation of AI. Have you had episode of
Yeah.
hallucination? Are you putting mechanisms to make sure there's or
Mhm.
sabotage, let's say? I mean, now also you can AI like the trillions of bots to create certain sentiments wave or something like that. What about those kind of
So,
challenges?
so we've solved the second problem of the bots because the AI is now smart enough to detect, the bot activity. So we solved that in the US election. So if you have 50 accounts basically churning out similar content, our AI is able to detect that and flag it. So we've solved that problem. I don't think that's going to be an issue. The other problem is the hallucination part. Now that's very beautiful because our AI has been hallucinating between the Tulfo brothers, the Rafi and the
That's what
Ben,
I'm
the
saying. You're being unfair to my man Ben Tulfo. I mean, he's my
so,
favorite.
the AI keeps confusing in the Tulfo brothers, and it's like, okay, which one is which and which one is saying what? And the funny part is, which I think your
I think
audience
there
is
are
also
eight
going to really
brothers. Just
like.
to be clear, there are eight brothers. Only four of them are prominent enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very interesting part. And the most interesting thing we've had working on the Philippines elections is that, people have names. Donald J. Trump, Kamala Harris. In Philippines, people have a name and then they have the other name as well. So, the actual name will be Christopher Lawrence Go, but he's actually Bongo. So when you train in the AI and the AI is picking data, he's not picking data on Christopher Lawrence Go, he's picking on Bongo. So the official names and that the words, because the AI is picking on the keywords and the other things, it gets very confused whether Christopher Lawrence Go and Bongo are the same people. So over time now it's perfected. It understands the Philippine market, but initially when we were doing it, it was getting confused in the names because nobody had,
It
for
was
instance,
hallucination in that sense. Well, I mean, I always say it's better to have bong bong than bang bang because Indonesia has Susilo bang bang Yudhoyono and nothing
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
beats Bangkok, right? So I mean, I
Yeah,
always
yeah,
say
yeah.
before complaining about our bong bong, we can talk about the bang bang of Indonesia. But you're absolutely
So
right.
the
So I feel bad for Ben. Honestly, I'm depressed for Ben because I'm rooting for the to make the next Senate even more
look,
circus-like and interesting.
the surveys the traditional surveys are with him. He's in number one or two at some point. It's
But
just that
not in
I haven't
some. No,
figured
actually,
out.
but you're interested. In some, is not doing as well. And I was told by someone that is actually worried because we had cases before when some people were top four and then they didn't even win at all. So
Yeah.
I think Ben has to also watch this for him to not take anything for granted.
Probably because his numbers are fluctuating way too much. So he's not a standard candidate. So I'll explain to you a little bit on this, that there are names that are very permanent and solid, like, Pia, Irvin. These are like, I mean, they may be in the third slot, fourth slot, but they're very solid. Then there are names that are literally playing on the edge. Bam Aquino, for instance. Kiko a little bit better now, but Bam and Kiko are literally on the edge. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They can slip anywhere there. There are names that are getting constantly flagged. Like, I mean, Ping Laxon, for instance. He's not very stable at the moment in our system. Bentulfo is very unstable. Even Abbey is very unstable. Villar is very unstable. Gringo is unstable. So these are the candidates that are very unstable. So there is these see the very perfect candidates, the edge candidates, and very unstable candidates. And I think the real fight is going to be between the unstable candidates and the ones on the edge. So I'm seeing what's really going to happen is Bamakinos, Kikos versus Villas,
Villar,
Tulfos.
yeah.
So this is the equation that I'm I'm looking at.
Yeah, and well, I mean, your model is actually a bit more optimistic, but obviously, I think Tolentino is a little bit out of this. But Ben Hurabalos is kind of in and out of the the safe zone, if I can put it that way. And I would put safe zone as number six to eight or six to ten at most, right? So
Yeah,
I think more or less, despite some variations we see in terms of potentialities, sentimental variations. And if you even do a regression analysis of how surveys didn't get, I mean, no one got Robin Hood right as number one, Robin Hood Padilla right as
absolutely.
number one. And
Yeah,
I think no
yeah,
one got Cynthia Villar number one the other time. So we have multiples,
yeah,
I think even Bong Revilla back in
yeah,
2010, although system
yeah,
is not as updated. So and also Villanueva, I remember very well on live TV, I was breaking it down
yeah.
and the host gave a look at me. So why do you think this guy won? I said, well, he was talking about vocation and jobs, test a man, right? I remember back in the day, I was breaking it
Uh,
down live. So there were many big surprises. Practically all of the number ones in the
yeah.
past decade or so were surprises with a few exceptions. So that's why, let's see. I think this is going to be an interesting race. Now, last part, of course, for the purpose of transparency, my question is then why do you need to consult people like me, for instance? How are we useful? Are we there just to give you the Michelin star, or actually human beings are useful to a degree? Because your AI seems to
I
be
think this is
smart. It's like,
you think this is where people don't understand.
mm,
They think about AI and they think that this is going to replace the human. That's never happening. Like, I can put it out there. I worked in Valley long enough. I worked in technology long enough. It's going to make the human more sophisticated. One is going to make the human more better. So the real thing really becomes, who's the human that is an expert? So we're looking at a world where the experts are becoming more in demand, and the people that are not so experts can be replaced by the AI. So somebody like you and I
has a
with this
Pareto
model,
effect.
somebody like
It
you,
has a Pareto effect. It does have a Pareto effect, right? It
precisely,
reinforces the
yeah,
advantage of those who already have a strong foundation in data
100%,
processing and
100%, yeah. So in what in some ways, someone like you, for instance, who has a very deep insight in the Filipino politics and the government, the AI will rely on you. The AI will not replace you. It will have to rely on you because you have the data points which the AI doesn't have, the real, the physical world data points. So you eventually, and I'm assuming that you've probably thought about it, at least I've thought about it myself. Uh, the our integration into the tech world, this fusion of the social science, this is going to become more beautiful. So the philosophy and technology, these are merging. So we will become, and probably you will become way more relevant because of your philosophical background and your ability to understand the physical world. So the AI will need a lot more experts. So yeah, which is why we thought that The actual experts on the ground are irreplaceable, and we wanted to see if your feedback can train the AI and the machine learning models in a better way. So that's very
Right.
important.
And for transparency, I had to say it because this is not an advertisement conversation. This is a very transparent conversation. And as I said, I'm more than happy because I'm also interested to see how this one is. I'm always eyes wide open for how big
Yeah,
data, crowdsourcing, and analytics and AI could actually change the because this is an age of disruption, right? I just gave a lecture a few
yeah,
weeks ago on like rise of BYD out of nowhere, rise of DeepSeek out of
yeah,
nowhere, rise of Trump back in the day out of nowhere. We're seeing a lot of these disruptors effects, right? And I
yeah.
of now we can see also. But yeah, I'm still hurt with Ben Tulfo not doing well in your system. We'll have to do something about that. But thank you so much, Dr. Hussain Nadim from George Washington
My
University, who
pleasure.
also developed this fantastic AI model. Of course, we'll say more fantastic, hopefully, as months go on and we track the developments. And of course, hopefully, right after the election day, we can have a sit down with some of our friends and other people that you're also consulting, and maybe we can look at our notes and exchange notes and look at exit polls, for instance. We can also have some comparison with that. Will yours also work effectively as an exit poll ish? I mean, it doesn't talk to people who voted,
Really,
right? But it could look at their sentiments after they vote, right? It's like, hey, I'm proud of voting for Bam, right? Right?
yeah, it's absolutely, absolutely.
And we absolutely need that because just to be clear, the other day we had the Okta survey, a former professor of mine from UP and colleague from UP. We were talking about the fact that in 2022 we had no exit polls by any of the authoritative sources. We had like
Yeah, yeah,
whatever, but I don't want to name names. But
yeah,
that was problematic because that was the first election when the Gen Z vote share was pretty huge. And my sense is they
yeah,
went huge behind Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte in ways that should have been a wake-up call and take all of us into the TikTok world, right? So
yeah.
I feel that absence of that exit poll is really a blind spot from an analytical standpoint. So
Very
I'm
true.
happy that we have this more affordable because the excuse to me, or it's a legitimate excuse when I asked them, it's like it's expensive to do exit polls and we were not able to get sponsors in that year or something like that. And I was like, what the heck?
Yeah,
Like this is weird.
yeah,
So hopefully your
yeah.
model can give something along those lines. Dr. Nadim, if are there like some how can again what is the name of your your model? Where can they get to know about it? And for some of the candidates who are watching us, I'm sure some of them watching worryingly and some watching anxiously and some watching skeptically. What are the things they have to look at? I'm sure some of them may be even happy. Yeah, I mean.
I think, yeah. I think if you're a candidate, the use this. I mean, it's open to public. You can use it. You can get on the website. I can share the link. You can share it with everyone in
So for
the
the
VLAN
purpose
as
of
well.
our audience now, could you say like www dot? No, we'll put the
Yeah,
link there, but there's some people are excited to want to go right away now, so you can find it
yeah.
up there. Then
So that's a little bit longer link, but it's dashboard.third dash iey dot ai slash elections. So it's a little bit longer. So
sorry
you're
about
gonna have
that.
to
Like,
check
tongue
it out.
twister. It was a tongue twister.
But yeah, so it's a little bit longer. The way I would say to so for the public, it's very easy. You're figuring out who's where on the slot and who's saying what, who's standing for what policy principle. You can just check out anyone, and you'll be able to see, this person is standing for this rights, this person is on this. Now, for the candidate part, it becomes even more interesting because this is really, really useful if you're running your political campaigns and in real time you're getting an impact evaluation of that. So you can basically see that I did this campaign on social media, or I did this talk at the ceremony or something, and what was the public reaction to it. And instantly you can see in real time this is the public reaction it is, whether it is creating an impact or not. And what are the people really saying about you? What do you need to fix? For instance, if I was Villar, I would probably address the issues of political dynasties in my campaign spending, or
I'm
maybe I
not
should
sure
stop
you can do
spending
that. Can
campaign.
like I'll kick out my mom and brother and like some of them are gonna have a hard
I,
problem.
I, I disown them until the elections. So I don't know them. After the
Yeah.
elections, I don't know them again.
No, I mean, because
So,
it's
so,
so
so, so, so
ridiculous, right? I mean, her campaign is a new face, bagong mukha, and she's literally the fourth member of
yeah,
the family trying to get into the
both
Senate.
of them.
It's ridiculous.
So I think this is very interesting for me as well because we're studying the Filipino voter and the behavior, right? And it is so clear now that the by and large majority of the voices that we are hearing are very much against the traditional people who have been in politics over and over and over and over again. And they're also very much against this infusion of entertainment and actors in the Senate and all. So there was one interesting thing that we're noticing is that there is a lot of anxiety against candidates that are just dancing in TikTok videos, and they're not talking policies. They're just dancing in the videos. So we see that over and over again that people are like, why do we need to vote dancers? Why can't we just vote people who have the policies? So there are things that are there, and I hope that the candidates are able to look at the platform, see where they stand and what is the criticism, and try to address them. Because overall, the net result is that we want candidates to move towards the public sentiment and common sense, not away from them. So any candidate who's able to use it effectively may end up having a very good run.
And you never know. My Ben Tulfo, maybe he will come with the right moves in the coming day and do much better. I didn't see Willie. How is Willie Revillame doing? Because he's doing very well in other surveys I saw, and he's so confident.
So
Oh, yeah,
yeah, so he fluctuates. He fluctuates a lot. So he's
well,
not a stable candidate, which basically we've categorized him in the unstable candidates. On good days, he's right up there. Not as good as the traditional service, but on the bad days, he's 14, 16, 17, and even somewhere down there. He's is spending a lot on the campaign now. We're picking up a lot more data on him than about 2 months back. But the sentiment is not really very positive. That's one thing that we're noticing. So some candidates are getting a lot of traffic, but if the sentiment is largely negative, then the AI is not able to give that person a ranking in a way. But again, I'll put a disclaimer and a flag out there because the Philippine market is unlike the US where people
exactly.
are
There are a
very
lot of people who
actively
don't have the
involved.
digital footprints, and there's a lot of
There's
command
a
votes.
footprint.
Exactly. So I think we just have to give it a
Absolutely.
disclaimer. So the advice to
Yeah.
other candidates with you take into consideration like that 5 to 10% bump, right? That digital gap aspect, the machinery aspect, and then you
Yeah.
work from there. So you have to build cushion. So in that sense, your system
Yeah.
is very useful, especially if you keep that disclaimer in mind. I'm sorry, Hossein, if I keep on pushing back. This is not
Oh,
a
absolutely.
defense, but this is I think a very high stakes discussion, and I'm truly enjoying it. So if I'm cutting you, it means I'm actually excited. So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit
Oh, absolutely.
getting
Absolutely.
yeah. And thank you so much, Hossein, for making
My
time.
pleasure.
We started a little bit later than usual, but hopefully we can have more of this discussion soon, maybe in a month or so. Let's
Absolutely.
catch up again, look at the latest trend lines,
Let's do
compare
that.
it with some of the digital data, digital surveys and analog surveys. Let's just call them analog surveys.
Yeah.
And then also, of
Yeah.
course, if some of the candidates will pick up on this, I'll probably forward the link to a number of other candidates. Let's see how are they going to respond, or if I bump into them in the coming days or weeks, and let's work it from there. All I'm doing, trying to do right now, is because I feel there's a lot of healthy skepticism, but also there's a lot of just sheer lack of information or proper awareness or understanding of how fast AI is improving. That's why Mustafa Suleiman's work about the exponential nature of improvement is something that I
Yeah.
always seriously, and I compare, for instance, just ChatGPT for the sake of people who are more familiar with
Yeah.
the household name systems, like the degree to which ChatGPT can replicate my style of writing, like write as Richard Haydarn about this, has dramatically improved over the past 3 years. It looked like a
Yeah.
joke during
Yeah.
pandemic. Now I put it as like,
Yeah.
well, it sounds like me almost 75, 80%, I would say.
Yeah.
So definitely,
Absolutely.
this is, as you said, this is a baby that grows, like crazy. Like this is like, like in the 300
Yeah.
spoof, like the babies, they come up with 8-pack abs, right? This is
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that kind of baby, Spartan
I,
baby.
in the election contest, in the context of the elections, and usually in terms of the market as well, I usually tell to most of the people that I work with that fortune favors the AI now. It's who's deploying the AI early mover on that. So if you can do that and if you know how to use it well, that's the entire game. And that's a human problem then. So it's the AI will be available to everyone. Like for instance, I put out the data out there, anyone can use it. But it's the human problem really on how you're using it and seeing it, which is where experts like you, as advisors or consultants or anyone, that can come in. So yeah, it's going to be exciting world, and I'm really looking forward to working on the Philippines elections.
Wow, I like 1 hour. I thought we were just gonna have 30 minutes of discussion, but
I thought so the
one
same.
hour just went
All
like
right.
nothing, and I think that just tells you the nature of how exciting this is. Thank you so much, Hussein, for sharing your views. Of course, there's so many other layers I want to look at. I'm already thinking about some of the things I saw in your survey, and I'll try to process them. But definitely, I recommend people to follow you. So please, feel free to forward to me the links and everything like that, and we'll post it below on our live version and also the finalized version of this podcast as we get the ball rolling. Again, we're still in the early stages of this new phase altogether of data gathering, big data analytics, and all of that. So I just hope people keep an open mind, and at the same time, of course, we have to have, as
Yeah.
social scientists, healthy skepticism. So we'll approach this accordingly. Thank you so much, Dr. Naeem, and I'll
Thank you.
catch up with you soon. Have a good day.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
God bless.